Baby cries when it's hungry, cries when it needs its diaper changed. It cries when it needs something. And as parents, we recognize the crying. What do I need to do to stop the crying? It's ingrained since the very beginning. And part of where the issue is, as parents, we don't like to feel our emotion. So if my child rips its favorite pair of jeans and they're upset and they're crying because they wrecked their clothes, what does a parent do? Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. You got other jeans. We'll get you another pair of jeans. You can keep them as play clothes. All of those statements make sense when we're trying to calm our child. But really what we should be saying is, yeah, those were your favorite jeans. How do you feel that your favorite jeans got ripped? I'm sad. I'm disappointed. Let them express that emotion. But my child's upset because their jeans are broken. That creates emotion in me. I don't want to feel my emotion. So I need to calm my child's emotion so I don't have to feel my emotion. These are all things that we're really doing about ourselves, not even really about our child. We think it's in the best interest of our child because we're calming our child, but really we're suppressing their emotion because we need to suppress our emotion.
We are exploring the profound psychological territory where early wounding crystallizes into what becomes our fundamental sense of self-worth. My guest, Sabrina Trobak, has spent over 14 years working with a therapeutic model that identifies a core archetypal split in human consciousness, the division between those who embody good enough, important, valued, and those trapped in the shadow belief of not good enough, not important, not valued. Her work reveals how these primal beliefs function as invisible organizing principles that shape every aspect of our psychological and relational lives. Sabrina, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. That was a pretty impressive introduction, I tell you.
Your book, Not Good Enough, I was reading through it and it feels deeply archetypal, this fundamental split in how we experience our own worthiness. I'm excited to explore with you how these core beliefs operate at the deepest levels of the psyche. What strikes me most about your model is how it identifies emotional suppression as a primary mechanism through which the not good enough belief becomes embedded in the psyche. This points to the wounded child archetype, that part of us that learned early on that our authentic emotional expression was too much, too dangerous, or unwelcome in our family system. You describe how families unconsciously teach children to suppress emotion through well-meaning but psychologically damaging responses to grief, loss, and trauma. This suppression doesn't only create a behavioral pattern, it creates what feels like an ontological wound, a fundamental questioning of one's right to exist fully and feel deeply. So the child learns not just to suppress emotions, but to suppress the very self that feels those emotions. From your clinical experience, how do you understand the moment when a child's natural emotional authenticity gets sacrificed to maintain connection with caregivers?
Honestly, I think that even probably starts in utero, where they're aware of sounds, they know what's going on, they can sense their mother's feelings and stress level and all those kind of things. It's possible that the mom's feeling sad and lonely and she distracts and calls a friend and goes to a movie as a way of distracting from it. I haven't seen any research that supports that, but I think it goes back that far. The baby cries when it's hungry, cries when it needs its diaper changed. It cries when it needs something. And as parents, we recognize the crying. What do I need to do to stop the crying? It's ingrained since the very beginning. And part of where the issue is, as parents, we don't like to feel our emotion. So if my child rips its favorite pair of jeans and they're upset and they're crying because they wrecked their clothes, what does a parent do? Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. You got other jeans. We'll get you another pair of jeans. You can keep them as play clothes. All of those statements make sense when we're trying to calm our child. But really what we should be saying is, yeah, those were your favorite jeans. How do you feel that your favorite jeans got ripped? I'm sad. I'm disappointed. Let them express that emotion. But my child's upset because their jeans are broken. That creates emotion in me. I don't want to feel my emotion, so I need to calm my child's emotion so I don't have to feel my emotion. These are all things that we're really doing about ourselves, not even really about our child. We think it's in the best interest of our child because we're calming our child, but really we're suppressing their emotion because we need to suppress our emotion.
What do you think this choice does between self-expression and belonging? What does it do to the developing psyche?
I think it has a huge impact. Self expression, if a big part of you is not allowed to express yourself emotionally, what does that say about how much self expression you have? That feeds that core belief, not good enough, not important, not value. I don't have enough much value if I can't even express myself emotionally. This happens so much right at the very beginning. We aren't even aware we're supposed to. It's just this ingrained thing like walking. We just learn how to walk. We learn how to suppress our emotions. It's just there. It's been going on for generations after generations. Holding in all that emotion plays a big role on the psyche as well. Every time we suppress emotion, it doesn't go away. It sits there. And so
Mm.
over time, it gets bigger and bigger. Now I'm full up. So any little thing, I drop the ice cube tray on the floor and I have a fit because there's no more capacity for any more emotion. That again feeds that not good enough. I'm freaking out over broken ice cubes. Come on, it's water. Wipe it up. And so we do all this self talk where we
Yeah.
end up beating ourselves up over and over again, reinforcing and supporting that core belief not good enough, not important, not valued.
When you work with adults who carry not good enough core belief, do you find there's often a specific archetypal wound, perhaps the abandonment by the nurturing parent or the rejection by the protective parent, that sits at the center of their emotional suppression patterns?
I think the big piece that's there is disconnect, whatever that looks like, whether that's abandonment, neglect, emotional unavailability, a parent who works away from home all the time. That disconnect is often there. And that disconnect is connected significantly to emotion. A lot of my adult clients say to me, I just want to feel connected. I just want to feel loved with my partner. And so I say,
Mm.
okay, what about vulnerable, fear, rejection, abandoned? They're like, oh, no, I don't want to feel those. I said, well, in order to feel connected, you have to be willing to feel those other emotions. If you're not willing to feel vulnerable, rejection, fear, abandoned, your capacity to be able to feel loved is going to be significantly limited. It's the same thing with children growing up. If my parent is disconnected, if my parent doesn't want to feel their emotions, they have to disconnect from me. I don't think there's anyone in our lives that we can feel more emotionally vulnerable to than our own children. So if I don't like to feel but vulnerable, I need to keep that distance and keep them at a bit of a distance. We all live in the same home, but there's emotional disconnect that's happening there.
What strikes me about this is intuitively, this moment of choice represents a kind of psychic death. The child literally splits off from their authentic emotional self to survive in the family system. This creates what I sense is more of a phantom self that carries the suppressed emotions while a performing self emerges to maintain connection. The not good enough belief isn't only a thought, it's the energetic signature of this original soul wound. The suppression of emotions creates a psychosomatic holding pattern in the body, those unfelt feelings that don't disappear, that get lodged in the nervous system and creates the anxiety that connects to core beliefs. The body becomes in effect, a repository for unlived emotional life. And there's something here about how emotional suppression violates the sacred contract between parent and child, the implicit agreement that the child's authentic being will be witnessed and held. When that contract is broken, it creates not only a psychological wounding, but maybe what feels like a spiritual abandonment.
I think that philosophically makes a lot of sense, but the application, I don't think the vast majority of people are even aware of these kind of things. They're in survival mode, just trying to get through the day, trying to survive, How do I pay for the mortgage? Groceries have gone up. My child's struggling in school. How do I cope with this? There's so many basic struggles that are happening in life to think about my child's emotional wounds, my emotional wounds. That's a level of thinking that comes after you've got some basic needs that have to be met. Like in my book, where we talk about Maslow's rule of hierarchy, right? If I'm not sure how I'm going to get food on the table, those basic needs are there. Anything above that is going to be significantly impacted. So I agree with what you're saying, but I don't think it's a conscious effort that people are doing these things. I think people honestly, truly believe that everyone is doing the best they can with what they've got. You and I talking in our podcast can help someone go, oh, I never thought about it like that before. So now they're doing the best with what they now have, which is a little bit more. I think we have to have some empathy that people are doing the best they can with what they've got. But unfortunately, that's not a lot. And it comes at a cost. The emotional wounds that a child has really is a mirror of the emotional wounds that the parent has. My advice when I'm working with families, my number one piece of advice for parents is work on yourself. The healthier you get, the healthier your child is going to get. Your child is a mirror. They're reacting and responding to you. So the stronger you get in yourself, the more you're aware of what's going on for you, the more you're figuring out your own emotions, the more you're able to see your child's needs. That's going to impact your child in a way that no other strategy is going to be able to do. The parents have to do the work first. But that's hard and scary. Sadly, for the vast majority of them, they don't even know they should be doing it. If I don't know I should change, why would I change?
It's doing inner work of shedding those distortions, which are challenging for many people, especially when they try and humanize that into application. Something that your work illuminates, which is profound, is really about how families unconsciously perpetuate psychological wounds across generations. You note that parents with not good enough core beliefs tend to pass these beliefs to their children, not through malice, but through their own unresolved wounds. This suggests that families operate as psychological systems where unintegrated shadow material gets projected and inherited. What's particularly striking is your observation that parents avoid emotional conversations not because they don't care about their children, but because witnessing their child's emotions triggers their own suppressed emotional material. This points to what Carl Jung might call the family shadow, the collective pool of unfelt feelings and unintegrated experiences that haunt the family system across generations. In your therapeutic work, how do you help clients recognize when they're unconsciously perpetuating their family's emotional patterns with their own children? What does it look like when someone begins to break these intergenerational cycles?
There's a variety of different strategies that you can use, but one that seems to work is looking at the generations. I'll ask a client, tell me a bit about what your life was like growing up for you. I want to hear about alcohol, anger, whatever it is. Then I say, how many of those things are now happening in your family system with you and your kids? And so once they're able to see that comparison, they're able to make that connection and see things differently. I talk with my clients about how the brain works. Our brain is like a filing cabinet. When I make a decision today, it's based on how I've made decisions before. Like I made myself a cup of coffee this morning. I didn't have to go looking for the cups. I knew where they were. My brain goes, oh yeah, we know where they are. You've been taking the cup from the same cupboard for the last 10 years. It's in the same spot. So our brain is like a filing cabinet. When my child is having a hard time or struggling in school, my brain goes back to past experiences. When was I struggling? How was that handled? And we go to what we know. We repeat those same patterns of behavior over and over again. Even in families where we see working with a family where, let's say, the dad grew up with a lot of alcohol in his family. Dad drank a fair amount. So he says, I'm never drinking. I am never going to drink. And he doesn't. He does not drink. And I say to the dad, on a scale from 1 to 10, how good enough did you feel in your dad's eyes? And he usually would say a 3 or a 4. Not great. Then I say to his son, your dad, where do you feel on a scale from 0 to 10 on how good enough you feel in his eyes? That's what the son says, 3 or 4. Tell the dad this, and the dad says, what? I never drank. I never had a drink of alcohol the whole entire time my son was born. I said, you're right, but you're angry, you're impatient, you're disconnected, you spend a whole bunch of time on your phone, you're busy working all the time away from home. And when you're away, you don't bother to phone or text or connect or FaceTime with them. So you don't drink, but you've managed to pass on that 3 or 4 out of 10. So the behaviors can sometimes change, but a lot of times they don't. If my core belief is not good enough, not important, not valued, how can I teach my child anything different? I can say you are important, good enough, and valued, but then the actions and behaviors that surround the child 24/7, they don't reinforce and support that. So it ends up recreating, and that cycle just continues over and over again.
Certain family roles or dynamics that consistently produce the not good enough core belief? Are there particular shadow patterns that seem to reliably wound a child's sense of inherent worth?
It's like a funnel. At the top, there's lots of different behaviors, but they all kind of funnel down to that same piece of that core belief: not good enough, not important, not valued. Drugs, alcohol, busyness, arguing, violence, abuse, neglect, you name it. There's all kinds of different ways that we as adults use to try to cope with not feeling our emotion, numbing the emotion. Vast majority of those strategies that I just said, that's what they're used for. They numb the emotion. When I drink alcohol, shuts down the emotion. When I go shopping, shuts down the emotion. When I'm busy taking care of everything out here, I don't have to deal with what's going on in here. So all these behaviors that we're doing are all funneling down to suppressing emotion, past that suppressing emotion, reinforcing and supporting not good enough, not important, not valued. So it all kind of funnels down in the same place. As humans, it can look very different for sure.
Yeah, I can see that intergenerational patterns operate like psychic DNA, the invisible blueprints of emotional wounding that get transmitted through energetic resonance rather than conscious teaching. I don't think parents deliberately wound their children, but they're unconsciously passing down their own unintegrated archetypal material. Family systems function as emotional ecosystems where everyone unconsciously agrees to maintain the same level of emotional consciousness. To feel more deeply than the family system allows is to risk psychological exile. I wonder if this creates some kind of emotional ceiling that governs how much aliveness and authenticity is permitted.
Yeah, for sure. The thing about emotions is we can't pick and choose the ones that we want to feel and the ones we don't want to feel. They're all kind of numbed. So if I don't want to feel lonely, abandoned, rejection, fear, I'm also not going to feel pride, love, connected, joy. The level that I'm willing to feel one is about the level I'm willing to feel others. For example, anger is an emotion, but it's also a coping strategy we use to avoid feeling emotions we don't want to feel. If we look at anger, think about a time you felt angry and then stop and think, what was underneath? What else was I feeling? Sad, lonely, vulnerable, anxiety, fear, you name it. There's other emotions there. Anger is more socially acceptable because it's been around for hundreds of years. It was a sign of power, a sign of virility. It's more okay to feel angry than to feel those other emotions. Now we're seeing a shift with anxiety. Anxiety is more socially acceptable, but really when we look at anxiety, often underneath anxiety is also a lot of other emotions that we're scared to feel, so we feel anxious. Getting better at feeling all of our emotions can really help bring that anxiety down for sure. We just do what we've done and we don't even realize what we're doing. It's just this unconscious cycle that we repeat over and over again.
Your revolutionary insight that anxiety is about you, not about things, points to something profound about how the psyche organizes itself around core beliefs. When you say that anxiety reflects our confidence level in handling life, you're describing what feels like, I would suggest, an archetypal relationship between the self and its capacity to meet the world. So this is only cognitive. It's about the ego's relationship to its own power and competence. What I find particularly striking is how you connect this to the not good enough core belief. If someone fundamentally believes they lack worth, their entire nervous system organizes around the expectation of inadequacy. So anxiety becomes not only a symptom, but the body's honest response to carrying an identity built on self-doubt. The shadow here is the lost confidence, the banished sense of capability that was wounded early and never recovered. When you work with clients who realize their anxiety isn't about external situations, but about their internal sense of capability, what does that moment of recognition do to their relationship with their symptoms?
What you're saying is really important to clarify. Anxiety isn't really about capacity or capability. It's about my belief in myself to handle it. And so anxiety is a symptom of that core belief, not good enough. If I feel not good enough, not important, not valued, I'm going to struggle with my belief in myself that I can handle things, not my actual capacity. We're way more capable than we give ourselves credit for. If I don't believe I can handle something, I'm going to have more anxiety. Lots of people talk about the triggers, right? I have anxiety of heights. It's not really about heights. It's about my belief in my ability to handle heights. If I believe I can handle heights, I'm not going to have anxiety. If I believe I can't handle heights, I'm going to have more anxiety. So people who have high anxiety have all kinds of triggers because it's not really about the triggers. It's about their belief in themselves about being able to handle anything. Once we start understanding that and people start realizing it, because so many people feel like anxiety is kind of this cloud above them that happens to them and they have no control over it. Well, that's going to create anxiety in itself. That's scary. But once you realize that's not really what anxiety is, anxiety comes within me. It's about me not believing in myself I can handle something. That understanding alone brings anxiety way down. Then it's looking at strategies, right? So, how can I better handle these various situations? One of the strategies we talk about significantly is make a plan. Whenever you have something coming up and it creates anxiety, as soon as you make a plan on how you're going to handle it, you feel better because now you believe in yourself more. You can handle it because you have a plan. So we talking about these things, implementing these strategies little by little, clients start going, oh, I was worried about nothing. That was nothing. It was no big deal. How often does that happen where you have this huge anxiety about something, then you actually do it, and after you think, well, that wasn't that big of a deal. Why did I even get worried about it? It's not about capacity. It's about my belief in myself that I can handle it. And so having that awareness, having that understanding just makes you feel more confident that you can handle it, bringing that anxiety down.
That shift from external to internal locus changes their healing journey.
Oh, that's such a huge part. So many people focus on stuff out here. I have a void, so I just need these things out here and then I'll be better. No, if you have a void here, it's got to come from here. Take responsibility. How do we not take responsibility? Avoid, justify, blame, deny, excuse, play the victim. I'm going to blame everything out here. Well, then it's never going to get better. Same with anxiety. As long as I'm looking for anxiety out here, I'm not going to cope with my anxiety very well. It has to come internal. The only thing you can change is you. That's it. So focusing on things out here is just not going to work, especially long term. You've got to do the internal work. Absolutely.
You mentioned that practice reduces anxiety by building confidence. From a depth psychology perspective, this sounds like you're describing a process of reclaiming archetypal power, the fundamental life force that knows it can meet challenges. How do you help people reconnect with this buried sense of competence?
We break it down into basic steps, and I'll say to a client, how often do you stop and think about how to walk? Well, I don't. Yeah, you just do it. That's what practice creates. So if you want to get better at managing your anxiety, using strategies, breathing, whatever it is, you have to practice. When you practice, we're creating pathways in the brain. where it becomes more instinctual to do those behaviors. Most people don't think, okay, I'm going to get really angry right now. It's just boom, they're angry. That's a pattern of behavior that is created in your brain by practicing it over and over again, usually unconsciously, but you're still practicing it. So now we have to consciously practice another behavior that can take its place, but you have to practice. With my clients, I always say, we're not going to just do a behavior and then another and then another. That's too steep. We're going to pick it down into very small steps. We're going to do the first step, then we're going to practice it until it feels really comfortable and you feel like, yeah, I got this. I can handle that first step. Then we go on to the second step. And then we practice that until you feel confident in that step. Then we add the next step. So we need to break things down into really small pieces. Otherwise, it just becomes too much. It's too overwhelming. We fall back off and we end up not doing it. And we break things down into really small steps. So if I've got a client who says struggle with social anxiety and doesn't even like to go to the grocery store, the very first step is you're just going to go and sit in your car and think about driving to the grocery store and then get out. That's it. That's step one. Once you can do that without feeling a lot of anxiety, then we go to step two and so on. And it may take 6 months of practicing these little steps before they're going into a grocery store at either 7 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock at night when there's nobody in the store. They're picking 1 or 2 items and that's it. But within 6 months, they're now challenging their anxiety that they've had for years and years and years. But the more we practice, the more we're building confidence going, I can handle this. I don't need to sit in my car and think about going to the grocery store. I can drive to the grocery store now. Okay, let's drive to the grocery store, sit in the parking lot, then turn around and come home. Don't even go in the grocery store yet. We take these little steps, practice, 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 build confidence with every practice that we're doing. I believe in myself, I can take the next step.
What I'm also sensing here is that anxiety isn't only a symptom, it's the psyche's honest assessment of the ego's perceived capacity to handle life. So when someone carries the not good enough core belief, I wonder if their entire nervous system is calibrated to expect failure and inadequacy. So the anxiety is almost like a protective mechanism trying to keep them from situations where they might be found out as insufficient. There's something profound about how practice builds confidence, not just skill, but a fundamental trust in one's ability to learn, adapt, and grow. This connects to what traditional cultures understood about mastery and initiation. This modern epidemic of anxiety, I wonder if that reflects our lack of meaningful opportunities to build genuine competence and self-trust. Anxiety might be the body's way of holding space for the unlived life. All the experiences and challenges that the not good enough belief has kept someone from engaging with. The nervous system stays activated because it knows there's life force that needs to be expressed and experienced.
Anxiety is our response to danger. It's that fight, flight, freeze response, right? So if I grow up in a home where there's yelling, fighting, volatility, where I feel unsafe, my body is constantly going into that fight, flight, freeze to protect me, right? But now I'm older. I'm living on my own. I don't live in that environment anymore. But that pattern of behavior of looking for danger is now ingrained. My brain has done that 3, 5, 10 million times in its life. Now what happens with that anxiety is I'm going, is that danger? There is no danger, but my brain needs danger because that's what I grew up in. That's my normal. That's that pattern that I know over and over and over again. So now I create my own danger through what I call a sense of danger. These are things like overthinking, catastrophizing, negative thoughts, what if scenarios, thinking that no matter what you do, no one appreciates you, no one values you. You can't shut your brain off and go to sleep. So now you're doing it to yourself. You're still going into this fight, flight, freeze response, but there actually is no danger that's actually happening. We're just creating it in our own head. So that pattern of thinking becomes more significant over time. When we look at society with anxiety now, I think our society likes to swing from one side of the pendulum to the other. Growing up for me, for my parents' generation, we were told, figure it out. We learned how to figure it out, how to be self sufficient, but not from a place of confidence, more from a place of survival. You did it or you drowned. Now we swing all to the other side of the pendulum where we have parents trying to run and do everything for their child because they don't want them to feel like they have to survive on their own. Both of those places, lack of confidence, there's still that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued. It's just coming from very different places. So I think it's good that we're talking about anxiety and understanding it. But where we're falling is we're going, oh, that's anxiety. Okay, you can't do anything because you have anxiety. Rather than, yeah, you have anxiety. Okay, let's feel it. Let's sort through it. Let's make a plan. Let's manage it so you can move through it. Instead of anxiety being this wall that stops us from doing everything, it becomes an opportunity for growth where we can challenge ourselves to do things differently. But we've got this kind of hovering piece that's going on here where we're doing everything for our kids. We're not wanting to challenge them. We're not wanting to upset them. We don't want them to feel anxiety. What are we really doing? We're still suppressing emotion. It just looks different. Instead of saying, if you're going to cry, I'll give you something to cry about, we're saying, oh, don't do that. It's okay. Same thing. We're suppressing emotion just from one extreme to the other.
It's great to explore how emotional suppression creates the not good enough belief. But I'm also curious about anger specifically because it represents a suppressed life force that emerges when our boundaries or worth has been violated. I know in many family systems, anger is the most dangerous emotion, the one that threatens the family's fragile equilibrium most directly. But anger also carries important information. Carl Jung called it the legitimate rage of the self, the psyche's natural response to being diminished or violated. When children learn that their anger is unacceptable, they lose access to their healthy aggression, their capacity to advocate for themselves and their connection to their own life force. In your work, how do you help people distinguish between destructive anger, what I might call sacred anger, the kind of healthy rage that emerges when someone's authentic self has been suppressed or violated? How does reclaiming healthy anger relate to challenging the not good enough core belief?
Yeah, I don't really think there necessarily is a need for healthy anger. I think it can be used as a tool to help you become more aware. But I really believe that anger is a coping strategy we use to suppress other emotions. So the better I get at being able to feel other emotions, I don't need anger anymore. I get that. I feel violated as a human being and I get angry. But what's really going on here? I've been violated. I feel not good enough, not important, not valued. I feel lonely. I feel rejected. I feel abandoned. If I can tap into those and really gain an understanding of what does that mean to be emotionally violated and sort through that, I don't need the anger anymore. The anger is the escape. It's what I'm doing to avoid dealing with the real wound that's underneath it. What I say to my clients is when you feel anger, use it as a cue. I'm feeling angry. Okay, stop. Get out my emotions list. Every single client I have has emotion lists, usually plural. I tell them, print them off, put them all over your house. Pull out that emotion list, read through it. What's under your anger? It's rarely one emotion. It's usually 5, 10, 15, 17, 20 emotions that I'm feeling. What core belief is being triggered? Getting better at understanding that and realizing that, now the anger just naturally starts to suppress. I think with kids, there's a lot of emotion. We're not good at feeling our emotion, so they go to anger, especially if they see it. Parents all the time, their kids they say, oh, my kid got really angry. They threw a temper tantrum. I'm like, well, you did the same thing last week. You already told me about it. You're teaching your child to use anger to get what they want, to suppress their emotions, and then you're mad at them for doing what you do. You got to change your behavior, right? We have to help kids. You can feel angry right now. You don't have the right to hurt other people, to take it out on other people. So it's a good time to find your own space. You can go and sit on the couch in the living room, whatever it is, you can feel your anger. But then we're going to talk about what was going on underneath it. They're in fight, flight, freeze when they've got that anger. They've got cortisol dumping in their brain. They cannot think straight. They do not understand logic and reason. They do not understand consequences. To try to have a conversation with someone in that state, it's not going to work. So I give them 20 minutes, half an hour, let that go down. Then I go back and talk to them about, okay, what was going on? Tell me what happened. So we try to get the scenario, and we look at, how did you feel when those things happened? I felt sad. I felt unheard. I felt helpless. I felt powerless. Okay, I can see why you got angry, because when you get angry, people back off and leave you alone. Those are pretty scary emotions to be feeling. What can we do instead? So I have to help them learn that they can put other things in place to manage that. I would say healthy anger is more when I start to feel angry. Healthy anger is, oh, what am I suppressing? So I'm using it as a cue to help me dig deeper and figure out what's really going on underneath it. We have a cycle of anger that happens, right? Starts with the explosion. We get really angry. Then we have the honeymoon stage. Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have got angry. Let's go for dinner. Let's watch a movie, whatever it is. Sometimes it's none of that. It's just silence, but there's a sense of relief that it's over with. Then daily life happens. Stress builds. Everything that we do creates emotion. I get in the car, I'm like, oh, did I lock the door? I don't remember if I locked the door. Creates emotion, right? I get to work and I forgot to grab the mail. Creates emotion. I got to work, there's 17 messages that I got to get back to. Creates emotion. Everything we do creates emotion. I'm already holding in decades of emotion. So now these are just more and more and more and more and more and more and more. And now all of a sudden there's some sort of, here we have the word again, trigger, and I get angry again. It's not about the trigger. Often we see this where that trigger has happened many, many, many times before in the past. Never been an issue. I've dropped ice cubes trays many times before. But now all of a sudden I'm crying on the floor, having a fit. Not about the ice cube tray, right? It's about I'm full up. I've got no more space. So boom, I get really angry, let out a bunch of that emotion, but now it falls right back in because I haven't really dealt with it. But now I also get to carry shame, guilt, embarrassed, regret, disconnect because I yelled at my family, people I'm supposed to love and care about. So now I got to carry more emotion. Cycle starts all over again. So this cycle happens over and over and over and over and over. The key piece isn't the trigger, it's the building of emotion. So we have to get better at feeling that emotion and sorting through it. That's a cycle of anger, but it really is a cycle of anything that we're using to suppress emotion. Alcohol, drugs, pornography, lying, busyness, cheating, stealing, self-harming behavior, eating disorders, they all fit. They're all what we do to suppress and avoid feeling those emotions. So if we can get better at feeling those emotions, we don't need that cycle anymore. Everything we do for a reason. So if we can change that, feel the emotion, now I don't need the cycle anymore. And it starts to dissipate.
Do you find that people with strong, not good enough beliefs struggle with what I would call righteous boundaries, the ability to say no, to protect themselves, to advocate for their needs? How does anger suppression connect to the loss of personal power?
And that's all connected to that core belief. If I feel not good enough, not important, not valued, I don't believe I have a voice. I don't trust in myself in making decisions because I lack confidence. So now my boundaries have to go from one extreme to the other. So I either don't have any, I let people walk all over me. I always feel taken advantage of, not appreciated, no one understands me. Or the other extreme, where my boundaries are my boundaries and don't you dare step over them. And if you do, you're going to pay. Both of those, I don't have to really make a decision. I don't have to think through things. I can just react and respond, react and respond, react and respond. My core belief is good enough, important, and valued. I can make decisions. I can have an idea of what my boundaries are, but I trust in myself that I can deviate from them a little bit if need be. I can find that middle ground of a boundary that is respectful of me and respectful of you. But if that core belief is not good enough, not important, not valued, I don't believe in myself. I'm not going to have a voice. So boundaries become extremely challenging things. And people often say that you need boundaries. Why don't I have boundaries? Everything I do for a reason. Why are my boundaries so firm? Because I don't trust in myself to deviate from that. So I need to build that confidence. The more I challenge and build that core belief, good enough, important, and valued, the more I trust in myself that I'm worthy of having a voice. And the more that I trust in myself that I'm going to be able to navigate how to put boundaries in place. But until I do that, boundaries are going to continue to be a struggle.
I'm sensing that when children learn that their anger is dangerous or unwelcome, they lose access to the sacred fire, the life force that powers healthy assertion and boundary setting and self-advocacy. There's something here about how suppressed anger often turns inward, becoming the inner critic that reinforces the not good enough belief. And the rage that should be directed outward at situations that diminish us instead becomes self-attack, creating what may feel like an internal war between different parts of the psyche. I'm also picking up how anger might be the emotion that most directly threatens family systems built on emotional suppression. So a child's anger, I would suggest, reveals the family's shadow, pointing to what isn't working, what isn't fair, what needs to change. So suppressing the child's anger becomes a way of protecting the family's unconscious agreements about what can and cannot be acknowledged.
But I think the other is also true is the anger then becomes the focus. So we're not dealing with that either. I say that to my clients quite regularly is your anger becomes their excuse to justify their behavior. Oh, you're always angry. You're always freaking out. I'm not going to change. Why would I do anything different? So it's your fault, right? So anger becomes that piece as well. Everything we do for a reason. Often that reason is to reinforce and support that core belief. So my emotions building and building and building. I get angry. People back off and leave me alone. My emotion goes down. But now I also get to beat myself up, reinforcing that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued, because, oh, I'm so stupid. I can't believe I got angry again. I wasn't going to do that anymore. I can do all that negative self-talk about the coping strategy I'm using, thinking it's helping me, but really it's creating more disconnect, more problems, and it's ultimately reinforcing and supporting that core belief. We often go to these coping strategies that work in the minute of just numbing the emotion, but then the long-term impact of them, they end up reinforcing and supporting not good enough, not important, not valued. That's what I need. I need to reinforce that core belief. So I'm continually drawn to those behaviors. We look at alcohol, right? Alcohol, go out, get drunk, don't have to feel anything, no big deal. Now the next day, I'm hungover, I spent money I didn't have, I did something stupid and embarrassing, broke promises to myself or others, reinforcing not good enough, not important, not valued. Vast majority of people that struggle with addictions or struggle with alcohol don't really quit. But for those that do, they often go to gambling or anger. So it just switches from one to the other. So now I go and spend money at gambling, watch all the bells and whistles or play. I don't have to think about anything. But now the next day I've spent a bunch of money. I don't have money for rent. I've broken promises. I'm lying about it. I feel embarrassed. I feel shame. I feel guilt because I've spent all this money that I didn't have, ultimately reinforcing not good enough, not important, not valued. That's why we need to not focus on changing the behaviors, but understanding why they're there and challenging them at that level. We need to look at what's fueling the behavior rather than just trying to address the behavior. We just try to address the behavior, we're not going to have a lot of long-term change. Understand why it's there. Everything we do for a reason. The better we understand why, the more we're going to be able to do things different. Most people don't look at the why, they just whack the behavior.
The other thing that particularly struck me in your book was your four pillars of positive change: awareness, understanding, resolve, and healing. It reminded me of classical archetypal journeys of transformation. I don't just see this as a therapeutic process. It resonates in me like what traditional cultures would recognize as an initiation journey. Awareness corresponds to the call to adventure, recognizing that something needs to change. And understanding involves descending into the underworld of one's personal history to comprehend how these patterns formed and why. And the resolve feels like the moment of choosing transformation over familiar suffering. Carl Jung calls this the commitment to individuation. And healing suggests the integration phase where new patterns become embodied and lived. And I see this as the hero's journey applied to core belief transformation. When you guide someone through these four pillars, do you find there are particular challenges or resistances that emerge at each stage? What does it look like when someone gets stuck in awareness but can't move to understanding, or understands but can't find resolve?
Right, for sure. Each stage is dependent on the stage before in order to move on to that next stage. So let's say we take someone who is in an abusive relationship and they've decided they want to leave. They've been in the relationship for, I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, somewhere around in there. That first stage of awareness is starting to even realize, huh, I think I'm in an abusive relationship. I think I should leave. This is not healthy. I'm not doing anything about it. It's just that awareness. Before, I just, oh, well, he'll change or she'll change or whatever it is over and over and over, not really realizing, I think I need to get out of here. This is an abusive relationship. So we have to have that awareness in order to do anything about it. That awareness process takes time. I start, oh, there it is again. Oh, there it is again. Oh, there it is again, becoming more and more aware. After that pillar is getting towards the end of being practiced, then we move on to that second pillar of understanding, where it's like, what am I going to do about this? What are some plans? What are some things that I can do to try to figure this out? I need to start saving some money or putting money away so I can leave. Where would I go? What does it look like? How do I handle my vehicle, my kids, my finances? It's now starting to put some plans in place, still not really doing anything, but I'm starting to get a bit of a picture of what it's going to look like. I'm believing more in myself that I can handle doing it. But I have to have these stages as I'm building that confidence, becoming more aware, making more of a plan of what it looks like. But that's scary. It's hard. I don't know how to do it. So I may do it for a bit and I'm like, oh, he was really nice. She was really nice. Made me a nice dinner. Everything's great and wonderful. It's going to be okay. 3 weeks later, a week later, a month later, it happens again. I'm like, oh, I'm back in that cycle. This can take some time to get there. The next stage is the resolve. This is the messy stage. This is where I'm actually going to start to apply some of the things that I'm going to do. So maybe I try to leave. Maybe I say, I'm not staying here tonight. I'm going to my friends. So I try to leave. I take more breaks. I challenge a little bit more. It's messy because I don't know what I'm doing. I've never done this before. I haven't practiced it. And so it's messy. It's awkward. I have a goal. I know what I'm working towards. I need to leave. I'm in an abusive relationship, but I haven't figured out how to get there. So this is a very frustrating stage because I know what I want, but I don't know how to get there. So there's a lot of emotion, a lot of frustration, a lot of trying, a lot of failure, and we just keep trying and trying. On average, it takes a person 7 trials of leaving an abusive relationship before they leave for good. That's a lot of practice that we have to do over and over again. Healing is that final stage of, I am no longer in an abusive relationship. I have now left that relationship. I'm figuring out how to live my new life, figuring out how to manage things, working on myself and getting a better understanding of why I was drawn to someone who treated me poorly. A lot of people say he was the abuser. No, you had a part to play in that. You were drawn to someone who treats you poorly. If you don't figure that out, guess what your next relationship is going to look like? So I'm doing some work, I'm doing some self-growth, putting things in place. I'm now managing that in that fourth pillar. So there's a process that we have to go through. And depending on the behavior and what we're learning, it can take an extended amount of time because I need to practice and build confidence that I can handle the stage I'm in. And then I have to build that confidence that I can handle the next stage. If I don't believe in myself, I can take that next stage, I'm not going to take it. I have to keep working to build that confidence where I feel more like, okay, I can handle doing this next stage.
Is there a navigation process or what feels like the death of their old identity when they begin to release the not good enough belief? Does this navigation require a grief process in terms of who they thought they were?
No, not really. I don't think it's a death. I think it's realizing I've had a mask on for a really long time to protect myself. I don't need that mask anymore. It's still part of who I am. All those memories, all these, it's more of an evolution of
Right.
growth. It is really a death and a change from one to the other. You are who you are. And that change happens over time. And that core belief, I say to my clients, let's say I have a 40-year-old client, they've been in counseling with me for 2 years. I still say that's still 1/20th of your life. The chances you go back into those old patterns of behavior is really high. You have to make a real conscious effort to continue here. So every once in a while, that core belief still pops up from time to time when I go back to something I haven't done in many, many years, right? I go back to that same belief of not good enough. So I have to catch myself and bring it. There's an evolution that happens as that core belief gets challenged more and more. It's not really seen as a death. It's more of just a shift of, I don't need it anymore. I'm working on something different, something new. And it's more about the evolving of that new core belief, good enough, important, and valued. It happens very slowly over a significant period of time. So it just kind of shifts and changes and grows.
Your emphasis on exploring each aspect of oneself, the mind, the body, the emotion, and spirit, points to, I sense, is something profound about how core beliefs are not only mental constructs, they're also, or they can become embodied patterns that shape how we inhabit our physical form. From a somatic perspective, the not good enough belief creates a contracted existence. The body literally shapes itself around the expectation of inadequacy. This unresolved emotional material gets stored in the nervous system, creating chronic patterns of activation and collapse or dissociation. So the body becomes both the repository of our wounds, but also the gateway to our healing. When you work with clients on transforming their core beliefs, is there anything you particularly notice about changes in their embodiment, their posture, their breathing, their energy levels, or their presence?
For sure. And everyone's a little bit different, but anxiety, core belief, that's us. And we're all connected. When we go into that fight, flight, freeze response, whether it's real danger or that sense of danger we're creating in our own head, adrenaline gets dumped into our body that gives us that energy to fight or to run away. That energy has to come from somewhere. So what happens is it zaps our non-vital organs, bladder, bowel, immune system, stomach, kidney, pancreas, liver, all of them get zapped of energy. Now, if I have anxiety once in a while when I'm being chased by a dog or something like that, not a big deal, I recover. But that sense of danger where I'm creating it in my own thoughts, that can be happening hundreds of times a day. If my body is being zapped of energy hundreds of times a day to put me into this fight, flight, freeze response, it is going to have a physiological impact on my body. If your stomach is being zapped 100 times a day, you shouldn't expect it to digest food properly. You're going to have stomach issues, right? If your immune system is being zapped 100 times a day, you're going to get sick. You're going to get colds. It's going to take you longer to recover. You're going to feel tired more. Our body is a physical response to all these things that are going on around us as well. So they're all very interconnected and locked together. We need to look at a body as a whole, not just, I've got stomach issues. Well, why do you have stomach issues? We need to look deeper and figure that out. What we often see is people who come in with symptoms of anxiety, sore bodies, stomach aches, headaches, TMJ, jaw pieces. As they work through and sort through things, their body is not going into that fight, flight, freeze response hundreds of times a day anymore. Their body starts to heal. Now they're not having stomach issues anymore. Their IBS has gone way down. They're sleeping better. They have more energy. All those pieces are a symptom of the healing as well. Our body follows us along wherever we go. So does our brain. As our brain heals, our core belief heals, it's also healing those other aspects as well.
I'm really struck by how your work points beyond individual healing to something that feels like cultural medicine. The epidemic of anxiety and depression, or what I would call worthiness wounds in our society, we're dealing with collective shadow material, generations of emotional suppression and spiritual disconnection that have created what feels like a cultural crisis of meaning and belonging. I sense your model healing these individual core beliefs might be part of a larger collective healing process where people are able to reclaim their connection to their inherent worth and emotional wisdom. I look at indigenous traditions, they would call it ancestral healing, breaking patterns that have been passed down for generations. Do you see your work as part of a larger cultural shift towards emotional literacy and spiritual reclamation?
That's the goal, right? And that's part of why I wrote the book. I started my private practice using this model of therapy, the core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued, back in 2010. Within 6 months, I had a waiting list. And I still have a waiting list about a year and a half long. It was at that point where I want to provide support. I hate it when I have to answer the phone and someone says we need counseling and I say, I'm sorry, I got a year and a half waiting list. So the book was a way to provide an opportunity to see things and learn things around anxiety, around yourself, around your own healing in a bit of a different perspective. The goal is that does become bigger than just me in my office, and people are reading, understanding more and learning more for sure. That would be the ultimate goal of doing this book, is that it becomes more of a increased cultural awareness of why we do what we do for sure. I'd be very happy if that was reached.
What would it look like if entire communities, schools, corporations, organizations operated from the good enough, important, valued core belief?
When I talk to my clients about the end goal of counseling, the end goal is contentment and a sense of inner peace. If we had whole communities feeling that, there would be more acceptance and understanding of others. There would be people working together. There would be very little to no anger. There would be accountability for poor behavior that's addressed at a community level. It would look and feel very different. The word that just popped into mind is it would be a much more safe feeling environment. I mean, still, life happens, there's things that happen, but it would feel more safe, and you feel more safe in belief that even if something bad happened, it would be handled in a respectful way of the community.
For people listening who recognize themselves in this not good enough pattern, what's the most important first step they can take toward transformation? Where does this journey of healing begin?
I think the very first step is awareness. You have to understand why you do what you do. I'll often have clients go, oh, yeah, I know that. I got that. Yeah, I know, I'm aware. I would say, okay, great. You're aware of that. So what I want you to focus on is, what are you not aware of? We often use what I know as a way of avoiding the stuff we don't know. So whenever you think, oh, yeah, I know that, I do that, then dig deeper. Okay, so where else is it happening? I need to start being aware of, when does that voice not good enough come up? How does it come up? How does my self-talk connect with this? What happens with the relationships that I'm connected with? How is that reinforcing and supporting that? How much volunteer work do I do? Why do I do it? Because I'm a peacekeeper, I'm a people pleaser, I like to make everyone else happy? That's not good enough, not important, not valued. And it's likely a bit more out of balance, where I'm not volunteering a few hours a week, I'm volunteering at my expense. So it's just looking at all these behaviors at a deeper level to try to get an understanding of why. Asking yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing, can be extremely insightful and increase that awareness.
I like the fact your book is a workbook. When I was reading through it, I wrote down, are we living through what I might call the great remembering? Is this a collective awakening to the emotional and spiritual wisdom that industrial culture systematically suppressed individual core belief healing becomes an act of cultural rebellion against forces that profit from our sense of inadequacy? So there's really something profound about your work. I sense there's a return to what indigenous cultures always knew, that emotional and spiritual development are as important as cognitive development, and that authentic community is built on the recognition of inherent worth as distinct from earned value. In addition to that, this transformation I find is both deeply personal but also inherently relational, because we can't fully embody good enough, important, valued in isolation. It requires community, witnessing, and the act of allowing ourselves to be truly seen and accepted. This is why the work is challenging, but also necessary.
Yeah, I think one of the downsides of this model of therapy is it does change relationships. You can do this journey on your own. You don't need other people. This is about self-awareness and self-understanding. But what happens is we're drawn to like people. So if, my friendships, my relationships are full of a lot of chaos and volatility and gossip and that kind of stuff, because that's what I do as a way of coping and dealing with stuff. As long as I'm dealing with all that, I don't have to deal with my own pain. But now I start to deal with and sort through my own stuff. Now I'm at a different level. So now those relationships feel different. I'm not meeting their needs and they're not meeting my needs. So it can be a bit more isolating. And so we have to work on understanding that doesn't mean you need to end your relationships, your friendships with everyone because you're not meeting each other's needs. It means you have to have a different level of acceptance. Your friends are still in the chaos, you're not. Stop trying to bring them to their level and tell them they should go to counseling and figure themselves out. It's their journey. They're going to do it or not. It's up to them. Accepting and understanding they are where they are. So when I go for dinner with my friends, I'm going to bring a bunch of conversation topics that I can bring up. If they start gossiping or complaining, I can distract and talk about traveling or pets or books or movies or whatever it might be. So I'm strategizing so I can still have that sense of connection, but I'm accepting that they're where they're at and that's okay. It just feels different as we're moving through that. So that journey is important for selves. I do a lot of work with families so that hopefully there is someone else that's kind of going through it together. So they do have a bit of that sense of connection and understanding. But I also have many clients that are single and they're doing it more on their own and figuring it out for themselves.
As we draw to the close of the conversation, where can people find you? And do you have any parting words?
My website is trobakholistic.org. On my website, it's got all my social media and where you can buy my book. It's got a blog section with a bunch of short 2 to 4 minute reads. It also has a list of a page with all my podcast interviews. So it's got a lot of information on there as well. My book is available on Amazon all over the world. I've got a YouTube channel called Sabrina Trobak. On Facebook, it's Trobak Holistic Counseling. And then on TikTok, it's NGE, so not good enough __ belief. And same with Instagram as well. So you can check out my social media. Like I said, it's on my website as well with links there. That's the best place to get a hold of me for sure. For buying the book, Amazon's the best place. It's the cheapest with the whole shipping and all that kind of stuff.
Sabrina, thank you for sharing not only your clinical insights, but for doing the deeper work of illuminating these archetypal patterns that shape human consciousness. Your dedication to helping people transform their core beliefs is about facilitating what I might call a return to authentic being, a profound act of both healing and rebellion against the forces that would diminish human worth. The 4 pillars of awareness, understanding, resolve, and healing provide a roadmap for what is ultimately a journey. This work isn't only about feeling better, it's also about the reclamation of one's life force, the sacred, the embodied confidence, and the spiritual knowing that we are inherently valuable simply because we exist. Thank you so much for being with us today and for the profound healing work you're bringing to the world.
Thanks for having me.